No degree is here, so we should probably get started.
Let's get
All
started.
right, I'll drop down.
Everybody
on
out.
401 East for 4 kilometers.
So who's gonna
Nigeria.
Okay. Everyone drop. All right,
who's
let's
gonna
get
start
Nigeria
first?
Okay.
All right, I'm dropping down.
Yeah,
All right, everyone get out of here. Let's
Everyone
get
except
Nigeria
for
first.
AR can drop down.
Yeah, everyone except for AR and me. Go ahead and.
Actually, hold on. AR, just in case, like, I am too out of it for this, I'm gonna send you the document so you can like take over if need be.
Yeah, do that. I got you. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. Yeah.
But I think I should be good. Okay, let me do that real quick.
Yeah, let me, you want me to set the timer?
Let me see. Upload a file. Let's see, master copy. Okay, and I've sent it to you. Now let me see. I might be able to do the first couple, and then if my second phone dies, then like yeah, you can take over the timer. But
Gotcha. So I don't have to do the timer then, right?
not for now, but I'll let you know when.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna look over the document while you do that. So I can,
Okay. But thank you guys for being here. Now we have our debaters, Vizzy and No Degree. The topic is the slavery in the Bible moral? So No Degree is going to be taking the affirmative, and Vizzy, you're going to be taking the opposition. And you guys will be doing the 1 hour debate format. So No Degree, you're going to get 5 minutes. Vizzy, you're going to get 5 minutes for your opener. 2 rounds of 10-minute cross-examination, and 2 5-minute closers. So that's what that's going to be. And No Degree, you will start first. And let me get the timer. You will start first with your 5 minutes, and it'll start when you say your first word. You ready, No Degree?
I'm ready.
Your 5-minute opener will start when you say your first words.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining me in another, I think this is my 4th debate in about 3 weeks, my 4th win after this is over. Again, it's about biblical slavery. And the question is, now I specifically structured the debate, what my argument is biblical slavery morally justified under the conditions of the Mosaic Law? That's what I'll be arguing. I don't think that you could argue biblical slavery under the position of the Egyptians enslaving the Hebrews was morally justified. But I do believe there's morally justified reasons for the Mosaic Law and the conditions there. But first of all, let me remind everyone, this debate is lost by the atheists before it ever starts, because atheists cannot ground morality, so they essentially have to steal from a Christian worldview to use these ethical standards that they were given by having to be born in areas that were influenced by Christianity. So it's just the case an atheist is never going to be able to argue that biblical slavery is immoral because they don't have any standard to justify it. So for the sake of the debate, I will allow my opponent to borrow from Christian ethics to try to make his point. But what I will be doing here is arguing that even by doing that, we can say, yeah, there could be some morally justified reasons for slavery under the Mosaic Law. For example, under the Mosaic Law, we see lots of prescriptions for not harvesting all of your wheat, your crops and things like this, leaving this for the poor, the foreigner, people like this. We see the Bible specifically warning against debt. And so God put in these prescriptions to for people to avoid being put into debt and stuff like that. But under the chance that they are put into debt, then there's also prescriptions on how a debt slave should be treated. There's also prescriptions on how a prisoner of war slave should be treated. And look, the Bible teaches that they were living in a society of immense immorality, evil people around them trying to oppress them on every side, even evil giants, trying to oppress them. So obviously under the context of what was going on, we could reasonably say that there was some moral justification for this. Even Dr. Josh Bowen has acknowledged that the societies around the ancient Near East had these consistent laws. So this seems to be a social norm, a social agreement among the society in which everybody was actively participating in these things. This is the way things were done. This is prior to the transformation of the world because of the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So we're not living in that society then because Jesus Christ had not transformed the world yet. So God is dealing with that situation as it's playing out and allowing these things. Now, my opponent isn't really going to be able to argue against this because politicians make these points a lot today. They'll say something like, women's right to choose. And I'm careful with my words here, but morally justified because if we didn't allow it, it would be done in unsafe manners that were actually more dangerous. We've seen Democrats often in America argue that. We see them argue, well, we should legalize certain substances, drugs that were illegal. We should make them legal because we can ensure they're done safely. Certain things like adult entertainment, adult film type things should be allowed because to not allow it, it would be done in the dark, under the ground, and be less safe. So one could reasonably say, okay, well, look, if God, by God legislating, allowing it, it's done out in the open where it can be done safely in a safe manner, because if not, people would have done it anyway. And that's true today. We can even make that case today because there's actually more slaves today than any time in human history, despite more laws against slavery than any time in human history. So something is going on here because we actually have less need for forced labor today. So what is going on here? Well, we just see that people just don't mind oppressing other people.
Okay, your time's up. So,
Wow, I thought you were going to give me like a minute warning.
Oh, sorry about that. But I can do that for the rest of the rounds.
Okay.
Vizzy, you're going to get 5 minutes to do your opening, and it starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay, so all right, I'm starting now. Hello everyone. I'll be answering no to the prompt: is slavery permitted by God in the Bible morally excusable? What is slavery? There are at least two forms of slavery permitted in the Bible: chattel slavery and indentured servitude. What is indentured servitude? Indentured servitude is a form of slavery or servanthood that involves a temporary contract between a servant and his master, typically to repay a debt. What is chattel slavery? According to Merriam-Webster, the word chattel refers to an item of tangible, movable, or immovable property, except real estate and things such as buildings connected with real property. By deduction, we can infer that chattel slavery is a type of slavery that involves the owning of another human being's property. In many cases, Christians will try to moralize the Bible's endorsement of slavery by saying that the slavery condoned by the God of the Bible was only indentured servitude. But they're wrong. The Bible makes a distinction between those two forms of slavery, and it endorses both of them, as I will demonstrate momentarily with the verses. Why is it that you have the right to certain objects in your possession? If you have some livestock, a car, or even a phone, what is it that you're allowed to do with those things that makes them your property? The answer to that question is that you can buy, sell, own these things permanently and hand them over to anyone you choose, perhaps as inheritance to your offspring, without any legal repercussions. Leviticus 25 infamously states, "Your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you, and then you may buy slaves. You may also buy some of the temporary residents living among you and the members of your clan born in your country, and it will be your property." 46, you can bequeath them to your children as inherited property and can make them slaves for life, but you must not rule over your fellow Israelites ruthlessly. Not only does this passage encompass all the things you have the right to do with your property, as previously mentioned, but it also explicitly states that the slaves would become the property of the Israelites. A rhetorical question I would like to pose for my opponent and the audience is, do you find this morally defensible? Would you want to be property of someone else? Would you want your parents, friends, sons, or daughters to be property? Deuteronomy 20:10-14 states, "When you march up to a city, make its people an offer of peace. If they accept and open their gates, all the people in it shall be subjected to forced labor and shall work for you. If they refuse to make peace and they engage you in battle, lay siege in that city. When the Lord your God delivers it into your hand, put to the sword all the men in it. So basically kill all the men. As for the woman, the children, the livestock, and everything else in the city, you may take these as plunder for yourself. And you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. The morally perfect God recommends the unnecessary enslavement of a people group to a nation that is attacking this people group. Would you want to be overcome by another nation and forced into labor? Would you like this on your children? In this verse, God tells the Israelites to take the women, children, and other things as plunder. What is plunder? Plunder is defined as property that is taken by force. So we can throw away objections from Christians saying that slaves volunteer to be someone else's property. Would you like to be taken by force as mere plunder along with everyone you know? These questions are important because they allow you to reflect on your moral values relative to these passages. Another way Christians try to moralize and condemn the slavery condoned by the Bible is by pointing to verses like Exodus 21:16, which condemns the kidnapping of Israelite males. But there are two problems with trying to do this. Firstly, this verse only applies to Israelites, and we know this because the chapter starts by addressing Hebrew slaves. And Deuteronomy 24:7, which parallels Exodus 21:16, explicitly clarifies the application of the law is exclusive to Israelites. Another problem with using this verse to justify biblical slavery is that kidnapping is not the only way to obtain slaves. A few ways that slaves can be obtained are by capturing people in war for slavery, as I previously mentioned, acquiring people born into slavery by ancestry, and buying slaves from someone else. Other ancient Near Eastern laws prohibited the kidnapping of people, but it was still legal to keep slaves. An example of this would be the Hammurabi Code. In the Hammurabi Code, the kidnapping of other human beings was prohibited, yet the code not only permitted the owning of slaves, but it also prohibited people from helping runaway slaves and rewarded people for returning runaway slaves. Yet my opponent would not say that the Hammurabi Code's slavery is morally defensible because it condemns the kidnapping of another human being. This shows that a prohibition on kidnapping and a prohibition on slavery are not mutually exclusive. And this was understood by the writers of the Torah and the people of the ancient Near East. Certain Christian apologists would try to compare the ownership of humans to mere employment or a soft type of labor. But there's no reason to believe this because the text implies otherwise. There's no reason to believe that the Israelites treated their bought slaves differently from nations around them. And this is a universal stance among biblical scholars. Is employment comparable to being owned as property? The last time I checked, your employer is not allowed to beat you with a rod, as condoned in Exodus 21:20-21, simply because they're your property. You can leave your place of work anytime you want and at your own will. And
Okay, your time's up. And that'll be the end of the closing statements. So now we're going to move on to the cross-examination period. No degree, you're going to get 10 minutes. And then, Vizzy, you're going to get your 10 minutes. And then you guys are going to go another round. So there'll be 2 rounds of cross-examination. So no degree, I can start your 10 minutes whenever you say your first word.
Give me when I'm about 1 minute away, give me a minute warning after at the end of the 10 minutes to let me know I have 1 minute left.
Okay, yeah, I can do that. So you want a 1 minute warning?
Yeah, once it gets to 9 minutes, just say you got 9 more minutes to or 1 more minute to cross exam, and then that way I can kind of wrap it up.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, I'm ready now. Vizzy, what was the title of our debate?
Is the Bible is the slavery in the Bible morally permissible or something?
Morally justified.
Is the slavery in the Bible moral? Yeah.
Yeah. So what you said here, I mean, basically what you did was the same thing Forrest did, the same thing Atheist Preacher done, the same thing virtually every person I debate here. You basically just repeat what the Bible says. I know what the Bible says on it. The question is it morally justified? Now, do you believe that a slave, by your definition, has his or her freedom stolen against their will?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, does the 10 Commandments forbid stealing?
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. The 10 Commandments would forbid stealing somebody's freedom, right?
I mean, yeah, but yeah,
okay.
Sure.
Okay. Next question. Does an enslaver covet, which means the desire to possess someone or something they have without regards for their rights?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Does an enslaver, one who enslaves people, do they desire to possess someone else without regards for their rights?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, does the Ten Commandments forbid coveting?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's two examples there that if you're following the Ten Commandments, you could not actually take part in slavery as you're defining it. Okay, so my next question
I
here
don't agree
is:
with that.
Do you think that arguments that say, "Hey, if we didn't allow these things and allow them to be upfront and done legally, it's only going to be done in back alleys and be more dangerous to people, and therefore that's why we should legalize them"? Do you think those arguments work for things like woman's right to choose, adult entertainment, and substances and things like that, drugs and things like that? Are those good arguments?
Um, Maybe for like women's rights, but I don't think it works for like substances.
Okay, well, just so happens that's a common argument the Democrat Party has made here. So could it be possible, and you mentioned ancient Near East laws and things like this, like the Code of Hammurabi and the Mosaic Law and others, could it just be possible that these people felt like, okay, well, it's better to do this and legislate it than to not do it and allow it to be done underground where nobody's respecting anything? Is that possible?
I don't think there's a I don't think there's a more I don't think there's a more like worse type of slavery. If you're saying slavery should be allowed because it's going to be done in a back alley, and it's going to be even worse. I don't think there's like a variance of the of how bad slavery is going to be, right?
Okay, well, according to Kevin Bales and Benjamin Skinner, Kevin Bales is a modern professor who studies modern day slavery. Benjamin Skinner is a journalist who's followed modern slavery most of his career. And other organizations, they will tell you there's more slaves today than any time in human history, despite more laws against slavery. And what's actually going on is often governments are turning a blind eye and allowing this to happen. And even if it's been reported, they're not doing anything about it because they're actually benefiting from this. These people are mistreated. They violate their human rights violations and all this. So my question is, would you rather be a slave under the conditions of the Mosaic Law, where it's done openly and there's limitations, or a slave today under the conditions that we have in which a government is just turning a blind eye to it?
I think both. I think both are horrendous, actually.
Well, which one would you choose? If you
I
had to
wouldn't
choose
choose either.
If you
I
had
wouldn't
to,
choose
which
either.
one would you choose?
I wouldn't choose either.
Okay,
If
allow
the
the record to reflect my opponent did not want to make a choice. I think the obvious choice would be I would much rather be a slave under the conditions of the Mosaic Law, in which it's done openly and there's limitations for it, than a slave, even say in a modern country today, in which the government's knowing it's going on and they're turning a blind eye to it, where there's no consequences whatsoever. So let's see. Next question here. I'm trying to think what else I can ask. So you have agreed that a slave has his freedom stolen, which would be a violation of the Ten Commandments. You agreed that a slave is coveted by the enslaver, which is a violation of the Ten Commandments. So I think we can pretty much rule out that what's going on in the Bible would not be considered chattel slavery, at least in this section, maybe not in Exodus. But my next question would be, you brought up property, that if your property, it's done by force. Is that your position?
No, I brought up a verse where God says you can take people, right, as plunder, right? And
Okay.
I defined plunder, right? Plunder is defined as property that's taken by force. So
Okay.
if God is saying,
Well,
if God is saying you can take people as plunders, he's basically saying you can take these people as property by force.
okay. Well, that was done in World War II under the conditions of liberating Europe from Mustache Man. So do you think that when the Americans and the Russians took people by force under those conditions, that it was immoral.
Yeah, I don't really think that's analogous.
Well, this
I
is
do.
what you're talking about plunder here.
Yeah, I do.
Obviously,
I think.
they by definition took plunder. Wouldn't you agree? They took over their
Yeah,
land, they took over their equipment, they took their people, things like this. So you would think that was morally justified, right?
yeah. I think
Okay.
taking wait. Hold on. I think taking prisoners of war is morally justified if they're a threat.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think we can reasonably assume, based on what was going on in the narrative here, that they were definitely a threat. I mean,
They
for
weren't.
goodness sake,
It was women and
some of
children.
these people had giants that wanted to unalive them. So
I don't.
I would definitely think that would be morally justified, wouldn't you?
It was women and children, buddy.
Okay. Well, we took women and children liberating Germany too. So I'm trying to figure out
So
why
wait, you think that's a good
think
thing? You think that's a
it's,
good
I mean,
thing?
it's not my time to answer questions.
Okay.
So,
All
but
right.
you don't think that that's morally justified, right? You
No, I
think
don't
that
think. I don't think
they should
taking
have been
women and
able to
children.
live after having lifted up a leader who done this heinous stuff,
I
that there
don't.
should be no consequences. Is
I
that
don't.
what
I
you're
don't
saying?
think. I don't think taking non-combatants as war prisoners is a moral thing to do.
Well, see, the problem was they didn't know if they were non-combatants or not, because they were sympathizers and supporters of them. So how would you know if they're non-combatants or not?
I don't. I still think it's immoral, like whether you know or not.
Okay, so you don't think there's any moral justification for this? Maybe even if
Also,
it's
I
a
don't think God
temporary
was
thing.
with them. I don't think God was with the United States.
Well, I mean,
in
yeah,
World War
I'm
II.
not. It doesn't matter about that. The idea here is you don't think there can be any moral justification for a society wanting to promote democracy and liberate people to do this under the skies of under the idea of democracy and freedom.
I mean, there's like some moral reasons you can do it, but I don't think.
Okay.
I think in
Thank you.
most
Thank you.
cases.
So you're saying
I think
there
in
are
most
some
cases,
moral reasons that could be done, right?
yeah, I think in
Okay.
most cases, you probably shouldn't do it. There would have
Okay,
been.
well, maybe that's the case, but there are moral reasons. There are some
Also, this
moral
is under
reasons where
God,
that
by
can be
the way.
justified.
This is under
Okay,
God that we're
so
talking about.
you brought
So
up the Code of Hammurabi, and it seems like you were saying something about the Code of Hammurabi. Were you saying the Code of Hammurabi was against slavery?
no, I said it was against kidnapping, but they also allowed slavery.
Okay, so you would say the Code of Hammurabi was immoral too, right?
Yeah,
Okay, and you would say that ancient Greece, the birthplace of democracy, because even lawyers and doctors and stuff were could be slaves. Where they were coming up with this idea of democracy, you would say that's immoral as well, right?
I don't. Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So during Aristotle and Plato's time, slavery was a norm in ancient Greece. This is the birthplace of where the idea of democracy come from. Now, what you're saying here is that's immoral as well, correct? Because they owned slaves and they actively promoted. I mean, Aristotle gave a defense of slavery. So you're saying that's immoral as well,
yeah,
right?
sure. I'll say that was immoral. Yeah.
Okay, so essentially, you're prepared right now to condemn
Okay, that's the end of
every.
the cross-examination. That was 10 minutes for no degree.
I think you forgot to give me the 1 minute warning again.
Oh, dude, my bad. I'm sorry.
Okay. Okay.
I'll try to remember it next time. But yeah, okay, I got to give you a reminder of the 1 minute period. Okay, so now it's going to be Vizzy's turn, and Vizzy's going to be doing his first round cross-examination, and that starts whenever you say your first word.
All right. So, what does it? No degree. What does it mean to kidnap somebody?
Means to steal their freedom, steal their bodily autonomy, to covet them and act as if they're yours and take them over.
Right. So you would say taking them by force would be kidnapping them.
If you have no justification for it, and it's not under a condition of war, then yes.
Okay. So Do you think kidnapping someone and making them a slave is immoral?
Yes, based on that criteria I just laid out.
Okay. So would you say that taking someone by force from their own nation into yours is kidnapping?
Well, it depends on what context you want to use. Under what was going on in the Bible, then no.
Okay, do you think so wouldn't you say like when God asked the Israelites to go to these nations and take children and women, right, non-combatants, right, into their own land as slaves, right? Wouldn't you say that's like kidnapping?
Well, it could be viewed as that, but I don't view it as that based on the biblical context
Why don't you view it as that?
because it talks about these nations that they were a part of actively trying to oppress, mistreat, and enslave, and even unalive Israel.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, it doesn't.
No, because it says no, no, no. Well, hold
Yeah,
on.
it says that all
The reason,
throughout. That's
the
what
whole.
Numbers
Hold on.
5. That's what Numbers 31 is all about.
Hold on.
They
Hold on.
remind them of what they did prior.
Wait, can I reclaim my time? Like what? Okay, so the whole reason, right? If you read the context of this verse, the whole reason that God says, yeah, you can take these people as property, right, is because they didn't sin, right? Like the Canaanites, right? That's why God asks.
No, it doesn't say
That's
that.
wait, hold on. It does say that, right? That's why God asks Moses. That's why God asked the Israelites, right? When you overcome a Canaanite nation, you should just wipe them out because they're full of sin, right? But these people, you can keep them, right? Because they don't have that sin, right? So
No, they still had the sin.
No,
The
they didn't
Bible
have. They didn't have as
the
much sin
Bible
as
says we're all corrupted with sin.
no, they didn't have as much sin as the Canaanites.
Well, they may have not had it as much, but they still were corrupted.
Right, but they weren't doing horrendous things like the Canaanites, right?
Well, they weren't. Their iniquity had not reached its full to that level yet. If you're talking about some of the lands just around there, we're not talking about the lands that God is driving out for the promised land, but just other lands around there that they may make war with.
Yeah, we're talking about like faraway lands, right?
Yeah, far away. Yeah, ones that weren't considered part of the promised land. Yeah.
No, they weren't considered part of the promised land.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. They were not considered part of the promised land. So yeah, there was a little. They weren't told to just drive them out of the land.
Right. But they did tell them to take women, children as plunder, basically. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
By force, and you know that plunder means property that's taken by force.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's how they define plunder, but it's usually just
that's
booty or
what it means. That's
well, I mean, cows and all of this stuff were taken too, so it's just kind of
by force, right? So it'd be like stealing. It'd be like stealing, right?
Sure. Well, it wouldn't be stealing in that regard.
It would be stealing, right? So
look, what I'm saying is, and
wait, hold on.
If you remember my opening statement, I explained all of this.
I reclaim my time. So, are you saying?
I'm saying it wasn't stealing by that context.
Oh my God! Are you conceding that the Israelites stole people?
No, not under that context. Not under the Ten Commandments.
You literally just said it would be stealing under that context.
No, I didn't.
Did you not just say that?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so what's taking?
Now
something
you may
by
think
force?
it's stealing.
Hold on. You wouldn't say taking something by force is stealing?
Under the context of war, I don't think it's considered stealing that way.
So under the context of war, taking someone out against their own will, that wouldn't be kidnapping or stealing?
No, because they're all participating in it. This is as I said in my opening, this is a social...
Who's participating in it?
All of them.
Wait, who's participating? No, they're not.
The whole
society.
Says by
force. It says by force. They're taking
okay, what I'm saying is, I mean, and Dr. Josh Bowen has talked about this, that these were societal norms. This is the way they did things. Right, so I'm saying that the whole ancient Near East...
Does that make it moral?
Well, I mean, it could be morally justified in this situation. But when you say moral, if you're saying, does that make it good? No, I wouldn't say that makes it good, but it makes it morally justified.
So you would say taking people by force would be morally justified.
Yes. There can be situations in which that can be morally justified. I mean, as I said, the mustache man.
Right. So your whole point of saying that God doesn't condone kidnapping or stealing people's rights. It's just no, because you already think it's morally justified.
Not in the manner that you think. What you're thinking
What
is,
in what?
I'll tell you what, you're thinking that just because God tells him a specific thing here, in one certain context, that then that applies to all contexts. And that's the grave mistake a lot of atheists make.
I never
Yeah.
claimed that. I never claimed that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying, okay, so you do agree that God asked the Israelites to take these people by force.
Yes.
That is kidnapping.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's not
It is
kidnapping
kidnapping.
under what
It
Exodus
is kidnapping,
21:16.
right? Kidnapping is stealing.
Well, I
something.
disagree.
Therefore, God asked the Israelites to steal people from their
Okay,
own
so
land.
well, I'll
Therefore,
ask you
your
this
whole
question.
point didn't make sense. Your whole point that God didn't ask the Israelites to kidnap people's freedom doesn't make sense, right?
Oh,
It's
well,
just
I
not
mean,
true.
it's forbidden in the Ten Commandments, and you already conceded that.
Right, but
Yeah.
yeah,
There.
God,
I mean, that's all you
wait,
needed
hold
to
on,
do
hold
is
on. I
concede
reclaim
that.
my
Yeah.
time. I reclaim my time. Right? God says not to murder, right? But He unalives babies in the Old Testament, right? So obviously there's exceptions
Well,
for
that's
God.
not murder.
Yeah. So obviously there's exceptions for God, right?
Yes, there's definitely exceptions for God. I
Right.
agree there. We can agree there. Yeah.
Right. So
Humans are not God. They don't have rights to do certain things God does.
right. So your whole point, right, of saying that God never stole people's freedom, right? Would you agree that doesn't make sense?
I never said God never stole people's freedom. I'm saying it was forbidden in the Ten Commandments for people to do that.
Okay, but did God tell people to do that?
He told people to go out and make war with certain people, and then if they made war with others, he gave them certain criteria for peace. But when you're talking about these other outside ones, no, I don't see where God is always just commanding them to go fight wars.
Yeah,
with
this
those
is a
people.
law. No, this is a law saying that this is what you should do when you go on.
Well, it's an if-then law. If this happens, then do this.
No, it says when you go out.
Okay, yeah, but what I'm saying is it's a prescription. It's not a command.
I mean, it kind of God is literally saying He's giving these people.
Okay, so you
His
think
property, right?
prescriptions and commands are not necessarily the same thing.
Hold on, let me read it says, you may use the plunder the Lord your God gives you from your enemies. So God is giving these people as slaves.
Yeah. You may do this. Not saying
right,
you
but
must
who's
do
giving
this.
wait, who's giving the Israelites these people as slaves?
Well, God would be giving them into them.
Right. So God is giving these people slaves, basically.
Well, I mean, look, if you want to look at it that way, sure.
That's literally what it says. No, that's literally what it says.
That doesn't tell you whether it's morally justified or not. That's the
Do you
point
think
of the debate.
do you think it's morally justified?
Yes, I think it's more. If God tells you to do it, then absolutely.
Right. So if God tells you to grape someone, it's morally justified.
Well, that would be contradictory to God's nature.
How would that be? Wait. How would that? Wait. So would He be morally justified if He did tell you to do that?
He wouldn't say because it'd be contradictory to His nature.
He wouldn't say it. That doesn't answer the hypothetical.
Yeah, but that's why it's a bad hypothetical. That's like saying
wait? Can you
like
answer the
saying
hypothetical?
It's like no, I can't because it's like asking if a square is a circle.
How is what?
I mean, that's contrary.
How is it? What's the P and not P there?
1 minute left.
The P and not P would be God does not want people to grape people because that violates the Ten Commandments. So He would not.
If God did want you to grape someone, would that be morally correct?
But then that wouldn't be God saying that.
No, would it be morally correct? Would it be morally correct?
God would not say that. It'd be a contradictory.
Okay.
It would have to be a different God than the God of the Bible. You understand?
Why would it have to be a different God? Why would it have to be a different God?
Grape is stealing a woman's bodily autonomy. That violates the Ten Commandments.
Yes, slavery is stealing.
Go out and grape that woman.
Wait, can I reclaim my time?
Well, I'm giving you the answer. You asked the answer. I don't know why you're reclaiming the time.
Yeah, so taking someone as plunder is also taking their bodily autonomy.
Okay, but in this case, this is an act of war. He's not telling them to go out and grape them. It's an act of war. Obviously, there's different conditions under acts of war. I mean, this is just normal.
That's time. So that's going to be the first round of cross-examinations. So now we're going to move on to the second round of cross-examinations. No degree, it's going to be your turn. And it starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay, well, first of all, I think there's some confusion here, and I need to clear it up real quick. So I'm just going to use some of my time to clear up this confusion. even if it cuts into my cross-examination. There's this idea called divine command theory, or moral command theory would be the better way to describe it in this situation. So moral command theory is a little bit different than divine command theory in the sense that it's basically saying, okay, God gives us prescriptions on how we should act in normal everyday society, not stealing someone's freedom against their will, things like that unjustifiably. But under moral command theory, there can be situations outside of the normal everyday that's unique, in which there may be some different situations. Like, for example, if you're told to go take a nation by force that has been constantly oppressing you and other people. So this is what's going on here. And my opponent seems to be confused. He keeps thinking that the commands for normal everyday actions also, and the commands in specific situations are the same thing. So my question here is, do you acknowledge in the Bible that there are certain situations in which God tells people to do stuff that may not be the normal day-to-day way to act around people? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So therefore, it can be the case, there be an evil nation that someone's doing heinous evils, and God says, okay, well, these people have been doing all of this stuff. Their iniquity have reached their full. Go take them, drive them out of the land, take the women and children as plunder and this. But that wouldn't apply to, obviously, the peaceful people living beside of you. That doesn't give you the freedom to go do that to them, because God did not want you to do it to them. Would you agree with that?
Repeat the question. I wasn't paying attention. Sorry.
Okay, well, then can I reclaim my time to do the question? Which would be about 30 seconds. Coco?
Say it one more time.
Okay, so I literally spent about 30 seconds building up my question to ask it. Then he said he wasn't paying attention. Could I repeat the question? So now I need to reclaim probably about 45 seconds.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I'll let you readjust the clock there. Let me know when you're ready.
Give me one sec. Okay, go ahead.
So basically what I was saying here is, there may be a situation in which a nation beside of you may be doing some heinous acts, and God tells you to go out and, plunder that place, drive them out, that he wouldn't tell you to do to the other nation on the other side of you that you're living peacefully with. So there's different context here. So you agree that there are those examples in the Bible, right?
Sure.
Okay, that's all I was trying to figure out here. Now, with all of that being said, don't you think a lot of your questions that you were asking me, you were confusing specific situations with the normal every day-to-day, the way you're supposed to live your life?
Yeah, like this was for
Okay.
Wait, hold on. This was for nations, right? I don't think I myself am a nation, right?
Okay, so you would agree that maybe if you were not living in an evil nation, a Canaanite nation that were sacrificing their own children to gods, that were doing behaviors with even their close relatives and animals and stuff, and you were not doing that, you were following God and living peacefully in another area, then God would probably not tell the Israelites to go take you as booty, but he might actually do that to that other nation to punish them, right?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
agree that he.
And that's
I
what
don't.
was. Okay, well, that's what's going on here. And I think often I see atheists make it appear they've never read the Bible by these line of questioning, because what they end up doing is actually thinking that, okay, well, when God told them to go invade the Moabite land, okay, well, that means God wants them to invade anybody, even the peaceful people in the society. And clearly that shows atheists have not actually read the Bible. So there is this moral command idea where there are situations that aren't the norm where God may tell you to act. So the next question here, you kept bringing up grape. If God told you to grape, does a rapist steal a person's bodily autonomy?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So, and since the Ten Commandments is forbidding stealing anything, then obviously God's not going to tell you to go out and grape someone just for the heck of it.
Yeah,
And
but
he
told.
that was my point.
Wait, so you're
So,
saying okay?
all
So
right,
you're saying
well, you
God
can
wouldn't?
ask me that when it's your turn.
Okay, okay.
So, let's see, where were we at here? And you seem to be now agreeing that context is very important, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so are you prepared, based on your argument here, since it's the case, this was the norm, and Dr. Josh Bowen has repeatedly, said this, that these are the norms in these societies, that the Code of Hammurabi, the Mosaic Law, these others are very similar, and that Mosaic Law isn't necessarily that unique to the others. Are you prepared to condemn all societies before the influence of Jesus Christ that had slaves?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess the issue here is, why do you think now, since you just happen to be brought up in a Christian society, that they're wrong? Is it just that you're using Christian ethics now?
I don't think Christians invented the idea of not wanting to be a slave.
Well, obviously, if you look at societies, if you look at historians, what historians have said, Bart Ehrman says Christianity turned the world on its ear. He's a non-Christian historian. Thomas Holland says that Christianity revolutionized and remade the world, and argues that when an atheist criticizes the Bible, they're actually using Christian ethics to do so. Do you agree with that or not?
If those quotes are real, then sure.
Okay. And, this was kind of made prominent in the Jubilee debate the other day with Jordan Peterson. One of his claims was that atheists use Christian ethics to judge society. And we have allegedly Ian, who was supposed to address that, failed miserably to address it. But William Lane Craig pointed out when he was listening to this that this is not even controversial. It's not even a controversial claim to say that even atheists today, especially those in the West, use Christian ethics to judge societies and to judge morality. So my question at this point is, with that being said, what makes you think you could ever mount a case against the Old Testament by stealing from the Judeo-Christian worldview?
Yeah, again, I don't think they invented the idea of not wanting to be a slave. But even if I was, like, I don't see how that's relevant, because this whole argument is about if any type of slavery recorded in the Bible is moral or not.
Well, the reason why
So I
it's
don't know
relevant
why.
is this leads to a devastating philosophical blow to atheists. I call it.
Yeah, but the question isn't the prompt is
yeah, but it's
okay.
called biting the hand that feeds you. So when the argument
The prompt,
is slavery in the Bible moral, then what you are essentially doing here is using your ethics from the biblical worldview to judge the Bible, which is actually leads you into, if you think the ethics in the Bible and Christianity is immoral, and you're actually using that to judge the Bible, then you have to question the reliability of your own morality, because you
yeah,
can't.
yeah.
You
My
can't.
answer
Well,
to
hold
that,
on. I'm not asking you the question yet. You can't justify anything outside of that, and becomes a huge problem. So, what is your thoughts on that?
right. So the topic is the slavery in the Bible moral, not is the Christian view on slavery moral. So I don't get why.
What I'm saying here is, you, by your own admission, admit that you're using Christian ethics to judge the Bible. You already admitted that when I asked you that question. By doing so, when you're judging the Bible, you're using the very
I don't see how this is relevant.
You're judging you're using the standard of the Bible, what was gathered and gleaned from the Bible, and the moral code that was laid down throughout. Hold on, let me finish.
Is more than
through
the Bible,
Old Testament and the New Testament, since Jesus is the fulfillment of the law, to judge the Bible. Once you do that,
but Christianity is more than the Bible.
You're kind of self-defeating. It's a self-defeating argument. You realize that, right?
Yeah. For the last time, right? it's the topic is slavery in the Bible moral, not is the
Okay, but
Christian
what I'm
view
saying
on
is when
slavery,
you come to the debate,
right?
whether you, that's why I said at the
We're
beginning.
talking about just the Bible
Okay, well,
here,
that,
not
look,
the
I'm
Christian
asking the
view.
questions here. And it's a bit of a
I don't
monologue, I
know.
admit. But what I'm saying here is when you come to the debate to judge the Bible, you have already taken up the precepts laid down by the Bible to judge the Bible. That's what I'm saying. These laws and these things that we just take for granted today. So you actually defeat yourself by actually even participating in the debate philosophically. Now, I'm
No. Oh
willing
my
to give
God.
you a little bit of rope here, but I'm just pointing out this is just a no-win situation for you. You realize that, right?
It's not. It's not because Christianity is more than the
That's the end
Bible,
of the
right?
round.
Coco, what?
But
Coco,
yeah, we
1 minute
can.
warning. Oh my god.
Oh, I got it.
That the 1 minute warning is Coco.
Why me? Why now?
Oh, I said 1 minute warning, but I forgot
Okay,
that I was muted.
I'm joking.
But okay, so
Yeah. So
now
yeah.
we're gonna
So
go on to Vizzy's 10-minute cross examination, and this will end the second round, and then we can go on to closers.
yeah. So No Degree keeps bringing up how these aren't. Yeah, God didn't command these as everyday things we should do, but the whole point of the debate is the slavery in the Bible, right? Moral, right? It's not whether, this slavery commanded should, apply to everybody, right? Also, you said something about like God would not command grape because grape goes against the Ten Commandments, but you also conceded that God commanded the kidnapping of these people, even though you said yourself that kidnapping goes against the Ten Commandments, right? And you said God wouldn't do
I
something
never
that goes
called it
against the Ten
kidnapping.
Commandments. Yeah,
Those are
you
words
agree
you're
that
putting in my mouth.
did you wait? You agree that stealing people goes against the Ten
Well, I
Commandments.
wouldn't consider that stealing people.
So, okay,
No,
you agree that taking someone by force as property goes against the Ten
no, that
Commandments.
wouldn't necessarily, because there could be morally justified reasons
So,
for
so
that.
it's taking someone by force as property, taking their bodily
If you're
autonomy.
not coveting them, then it wouldn't be a problem. That's why I brought up coveting.
Wait, so taking someone by force from your own land and using them as property is fine if you're not coveting them.
Because you're not disregarding their rights, because they have already violated other people's rights. That's
What do you
why
mean?
it's so important to use the word covet, not just stealing, but also covet in this.
So, okay, so covet would mean like wanting someone else's property, right?
Coveting is the desire to possess someone or something without regards for their rights. During
Right.
wartime, you're
So
not
wait,
doing that.
wait, 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 wait. Wouldn't like taking someone as property from their own land by force be coveting someone by your
Well,
definition
is
of
this
coveting?
outside of the context of a justified war or not?
It doesn't. It literally just. How do you know it's justified if they're capturing children?
Because when you go to war, it's not like you're saying, "Oh, look, I just want to take them because I covet them without regards for the rights." No, they've already done stuff that has presumably violated your rights or someone else's, so it would be morally just at that point.
No. Oh, you think children did something to all the children in the town, all the women in the town? They
Well,
did
I'm
something
talking
to
about
violate someone's right.
obviously the
How would you even
adults.
know that? How would you know
Well, I
that?
didn't say the children did. This is, I mean, they're collateral
Yeah,
damage.
yeah. Okay, so the children didn't. Do you agree that at least the children probably didn't?
Sure. Yeah, I'd say they're not morally
Right.
culpable here.
God literally commands the Israelites, right, that you can go and take these children, right, as property, right, as plunder,
Okay, so
right?
God allowed
Do you
them.
think that's
God allowed them to adopt
do
them
you,
and
do you
bring.
think that's coveting?
Yeah,
Do you think
adopt
that's
them.
coveting?
No, I don't think they were
Do
coveting
you,
him. No, I don't think so.
oh my God. Okay,
Yeah, no, I
you
don't
keep
think
going.
that they were coveting it. I think God is saying,
Okay,
okay, take these
I'm gonna
people
go
and provide them a place
I'm
to
gonna go
stay.
over the. Can I reclaim my time real quick? Okay, so I'm gonna go over this again. What's your definition of coveting
The
that you gave
desire,
before?
the desire to possess someone or something of someone's without regards for their rights.
Okay, so wait, let me write that down. Okay, or actually, no, I'm gonna save time. Okay, so would you say that taking someone by force from their own land as property is disregarding their
It
rights.
depends on the context.
So
It could
what
be, but
context
not
would that?
necessarily. Okay, well, like I said, it obviously
But
when America and Russia went over to liberate Europe and they did this, I don't think they were coveting the Germans and said, "Oh, we desire to possess
so
them
if they
without."
took the children, wait, if they took the non-combatants, right, like the children and the women, would you think that's
No, I
coveting?
don't think it was.
You don't
No,
think that's
I
coveting?
think that they were saying, "Hey, we've got to do something with them. Obviously, we just unalived all their people, so we've got to do something."
Wait, so it's taking the women and children by force as property. Would that be coveting?
It depends on the context again.
Would that be taking their bodily autonomy and their rights?
I mean, it depends on the context.
Can you just answer?
I mean, no, it depends on the context because, like I said, you've already agreed that context
So what
matters.
context? Okay, what context would taking someone as property, right, or as plunder from their own land be not be taking away their rights?
Well, in the case of what was going on in Germany, those people had willingly forsaken their own rights and give them up
Oh my
by
God.
what they were.
Okay, so
and that's
okay, what
I'm
about the
saying.
children, right?
Well,
you keep
yeah,
okay, you
but the
keep forgetting the
children,
children, the
obviously,
women.
it's a different situation with children because children can be passed down as an inheritance even today in America. So I don't know why you keep bringing children.
Well, yeah, that's just
I don't know why
that
you
just
keep
doesn't
bringing
make sense.
children up
I
here.
don't know why you're bringing that up. That's
Well, you
like
brought up
irrelevant.
children. I'm saying obviously that's a different
Can
rule
you?
than adults,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. So, can you agree that taking the children, right, as property by force, by the way, to your own land from their land, right, would be violating their rights?
Again, it depends on the context.
Oh my God, bro!
I mean,
it's just gonna be.
I
Going,
mean, if it's in the
it's just gonna wait. It's just gonna
if
go
it's
in
in the
circles with you,
context
isn't
of
it?
war, then obviously there's different rules there. That's why it's brought up moral command theory here, and we even live by that today. There's nothing unusual about
Okay,
that.
so no degree. Do you think taking someone, right, taking someone who was involved in the war, like a child, right, as a slave, right, is a good thing?
As a slave, well, I mean, I'm
Yeah, as
assuming you
property.
mean that they just these people were just there's no moral justification or anything, right?
Can you just answer the
I
question
mean,
or not?
again, it depends on if there's moral justification. Maybe these children were running around with explosive devices strapped to them and running into malls and blowing them up.
So
So yeah,
you're
sure,
saying
you
all
might
the
want to
children.
take them at that
Wait,
point.
so you're saying all the children in the town that God asked, God the towns that God asked the Israelites, right, to take as plunder, they were all running around with explosives
No,
and
I'm not
knives and
saying
stuff
that.
like
I'm
that.
saying that there obviously we can easily think up situations where that might be necessary. There. I mean, we saw this. We
Right,
see this in the.
but how
We see this
likely is
in the
that?
Middle East now. I mean,
Wait, how likely is that?
likely. Well, obviously in the Bible times they didn't have explosives, but children may have very well participated in doing evil things during wartime. Who knows? I mean, we have an account.
No, wait.
We have an
The
account.
text specifically says, right, that the reason you're allowed to take these people is because they're pure, unlike the Canaanites, right? They're not
What
doing these
passage are you
horrendous
talking about?
acts, right? Deuteronomy 20:10
Could
to
you read that
14,
out loud?
right? It says, but as for 16 says, but as for the towns of the people, right, that the Lord your God is giving you as inheritance, you must not let anything that breathes remain alive. Indeed, you shall annihilate them, the Hittites, the Amorites, blah blah blah. Just as the Lord has commanded, so that they may not teach you all the abhorrent things that they do for their gods, and you thus sin against the Lord your God, right? It says you're allowed to specifically unalive all of them, right? Specifically because of the
Because of
sins
their
they
evil,
committed.
yeah.
But these, wait, hold on. But these other people, right, you're allowed to take, right, specifically because they didn't sin.
Wait a second.
They're
I
not
want to
doing these
know where it
abhorrent
says
acts.
you're allowed to take him because they didn't sin against God.
That's it's implied. That's implied.
Really? Okay, you know the Bible says
What's
that
implied?
no one does good, that all are evil before the eyes of the Lord, right? So you can't say that's
Wait, can you
implied.
repeat that? Wait, can you repeat that?
The
Can you repeat
Bible
that?
says that there's no one that does good, that we're all of our actions are nothing but filthy
Right.
rags.
So even the Israelites,
Yes,
Israelites,
even the Israelites.
right? So why does God prohibit the kidnapping, right, of your fellow Israelites? But he says, yeah, you can go to these other lands and take children as property, as plunder by force.
Well, I don't know what you mean, God prohibiting the kidnapping of your fellow Israelites, because in Exodus 21:16,
You're saying he
well, it
doesn't?
doesn't say Israelite there. It says that in Deuteronomy.
Yeah, the Deuteronomy is literally parroting the Exodus verse.
Okay, well, look, I mean, I don't know what you're trying to say here. You're saying that, are you saying that God is wrong for allowing this to happen to the nations around them simply because of the
No, I'm saying
evil?
God is wrong for like God is wrong for commanding the Israelites, for giving these people up, right, as property to the Israelites, right, to take them by force,
Okay,
right,
well, look, you
as
think it's
property,
wrong. I
as
think it's
plunder.
morally justified. We just come to the conclusion differently.
Yeah. So yeah, but you keep saying that kidnapping is wrong, right? Which this fits under the definition of kidnapping, right?
I don't know what passage you're saying fits under the definition of kidnapping.
Bro, I explained it to you
No, I
several
mean, Exodus
times.
21.
Oh my God. Hold on. Let me read it. Let me read it again if I have time. But as for the towns, hold on. You may, however, take as your plunder the woman, the children, the livestock, and plunder, right, means property that is taken by force, right? And under your definition of kidnapping, right, it would be taking someone's
Sorry,
property.
I actually got a phone call. My neighbor is actually needing me to catch a snake off of her back patio at the moment, so I'm going to have to go do that.
Oh, how long do you think that's going to take?
Possibly 15 minutes or so. I mean, how much time is left here in this cross examination?
It's over, and now you guys are going to do your 5-minute closers.
Okay, well, I would suggest what you can do is just kind of, you know, start like another debate, and then if we get a chance to do our closers later, we can. If not, then that's fine.
Are you sure you can't knock out 5 minutes really quick, and then you can go?
Well, it shouldn't take me long. It may, if y'all just patiently await for a few minutes. It shouldn't take me that long. I'll be back because she's an elderly woman and she gets really freaked out by
Yeah,
snakes.
within this time that you were talking, we could have just done the closer. I mean, okay, you have to go. You
Or
have to
actually,
go.
well, maybe while he's doing that, Vizzy can do his closer.
Yeah, but like you're saying
Sure, yeah.
15 minutes, but all right.
All right, go ahead, Vizzy.
Uh-huh.
You're gonna have 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I mean that was a pretty weird debate, but I noticed people were saying like my opening was like kind of fast. I thought it was gonna be like an 8-minute opener, and you know the stuff that I kind of wrote down was kind of long, so I had to like fit everything into 5 minutes. That's why I had to talk that fast. But yeah, my opponent was clearly contradicting himself because he said that God wouldn't command rape because it goes against the Ten Commandments, right? But my opponent literally conceded that under the Deuteronomy 20, 10 to 14, right? That would, you know, fit the definition of coveting, right? Which would be taking someone's bodily autonomy and rights away, right? And God commanded that, right? So my opponent is clearly just contradicting himself. What else did he say? I mean, he said a bunch of bullshit. He said that that wouldn't apply to the today's context, which like doesn't even, that's not even the topic of the debate. The topic is the biblical slavery moral, not if fucking it would be applied to today's context. So I don't know where he was going there. But yeah, I would say I still appreciate that he took the time out of his day to come and debate me, and also I appreciate Coco and also the audience and all of the moderators. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, with that, I'm pausing your time, and you had 3 minutes and 12 seconds left. No Degree said he had to go run a favor, so
What's that favor gonna be, actually?
he said it was gonna take 15 minutes, and I was okay.
Enough time to catch more Pokemon.
AR, what do you think we should do?
catch more
I think we
Pokemon.
should. I mean, how much time is till the next debate?
The next debate is going to start at I believe 8 o'clock, and it's going to be Bought by
Yeah,
Blood
that
versus Cyber
evening.
Deconstruction on Luke is a second century document.
It's in 30 minutes.
It's in 30 minutes.
30
Yeah,
is
I mean, we can give it time, right? Until like the 5 minute, until like there's like 5 minutes until 8 o'clock, right? Because all he needs is 5 minutes. So I mean, we could just.
Wait, is there
chill.
gonna be
Sure.
questions or
Should
no?
we move on to? I mean, he has to say his closing statement, but maybe we move on to questions regarding the other parts of the debate.
Yeah, let's do questions.
Yeah, you can also. Yeah, we can't even pull the poll up.
And the
Okay,
poll's not always gonna be the.
Here's what I'll say.
J-Rob said he'll give the closing statement.
J-Rob?
That's fine.
That's not how that works.
Here's
That's
what
not how it
I'll
works
do.
at all.
We're gonna have guests come up and comment on the cross-examination and the introductory statements, but nobody say who you think won. Nobody like hint at even who you think won. We don't want to sway the results of the.
And I came in and halfway. I don't want y'all ruining my interesting finding out by Coco.
Yeah, so nobody say who you think won. Just say your thoughts on the cross-examination and opener, and then no degree is going to give his closer, and everyone can say who won after that. So we're going to start taking guests. I think cyber deconstruction. I think you're waiting for the next debate. I think, right?
Yeah, I'll just be chilling down here on mute.
Yeah, totally
Okay.
fine. And then we got Everlasting. So you got any comments or questions regarding the cross-examination and the opening statements?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask No Degree because the topic is slavery in the Bible moral, and I particularly wanted to focus on questioning the young virgins that are taken as plunder, and like asking him to justify where there's any morality found in that
Okay.
command. So that's one of my big things. I mean, I find that to be like extremely immoral. The way the Bible treats women in general as being extremely immoral.
Okay. I would say we still are going to have like the 20-minute audience comments. If No Degree comes back and we're able to finish that on time. But let's take all the questions for Vizzy for right now, actually. So if anyone has any questions for Vizzy, request in the chat, and then we can get the questions for No Degree later. Let's see.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Hey.
So I do have a question for No Degree, and I also have a question for Vizzy.
Okay.
Vizzy, why did you plant a snake in his neighbor's yard? Is it because you were taking an L?
Yeah, I planted it. I planted a cobra.
I knew it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I guess I could ask a real question. Do you have a book recommendation?
Do I have a book recommendation?
Yeah, any book.
Any book?
Yep.
I'm reading one right now. It's called The Mysteries of Acts. You could probably check that out.
All right. Thank y'all for having me up. I'll be back if No Degree comes back, though.
Okay.
Well,
I think
yeah.
Cage had a question.
Damn, Kate.
Go on next. Hold on, let me invite him.
Fuck, my Pokemon are dying.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, he's back? No Degree's back and good to go? Oh, okay. Actually, we're going to pause those questions.
Pause the question.
No, why don't we continue the questions?
No, we can do it after because we got to finish
okay.
the debate. But No Degree, yeah. Vizzy finished his closing statement and we took like a couple questions. Now it's your turn. You're going to get a 5-minute closing statement and it starts whenever you say your first word.
Okay. Well, I think this debate demonstrated basically what every debate demonstrates when we have these conversations with atheists, that atheists just don't read the Bible. They just don't know what it says. And that's from the range from the most well-studied atheist all the way down to just your, run-of-the-mill atheist. I don't think Vizzy was understanding that just because there were certain situations in which God was telling them to go out and do this under a certain context, that implies that God is telling everyone they can do this and that God is okay with this doing this out of that context. And obviously that's not the case. And that's why I had to explain this idea of moral command theory, in which God gives certain rules and regulations that we are to live by, to prescribe for us to live by in our daily interactions with people. But there are circumstances in which, iniquity, evil had reached its full, in which God may ask people to step up and do something beyond that. And that's what we see going on in these situations. And I think once we understand this, that gives us a much better way to approach the Bible. Secondly, Vizzy understands that slavery, by his definition, is the stealing of someone else's rights, which would be violated by the Ten Commandments. He understands that coveting, an enslaver would be coveting someone else's freedom, desiring to possess them without regards for their rights. He understands that that's forbidden in the Ten Commandments. So essentially, in these everyday normal life, slavery is not something that should be done. But there are certain justifications, there are certain criteria in which God allowed and legislated certain things to occur because of, you could say, the hardness of man's heart. Just like divorce, just like other things. Is that it? So in conclusion here, I just think that this is just another example of atheists just needing to do their homework. Because even Dr. Josh Bowen has acknowledged that these laws in the Mosaic Law are not out of the ordinary in comparison to other laws in that time period. And by condemning the Mosaic Law, you're essentially condemning all these ancient societies. And do you think that's really fair to do so, since you're actually condemning them by the Christian ethics that you were raised up in the Western societies or in the world today? And this is just also a given. It's not even controversial to say that atheists are using Christian ethics to judge the Bible. But it's a huge philosophical problem that ultimately leaves the atheist, metaphorically speaking, scared, alone, naked, and confused without a good answer. And that is my conclusion to this debate.
Okay. And with that, you had 1 minute and 43 seconds on the timer. So with that,
that's good. I'm good.
What time is it? It is 7:46. Okay, we're gonna have a couple questions right now, and then the next debate has to start at 8 o'clock. So I'm gonna start bringing people up.
I have a quick question, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so it's for No Degree. So you mentioned that atheists, when we do things, we're acting under Christian ethics. But my question is, when we look at concepts like not unaliving, not stealing, the golden rule, treating others as you wish to be treated, etc., we also find these in Confucianism and Buddhism, and we also find these in agnostic Greek philosophy. So with this stated, since these most of these definitely predate Christianity, but it's contended that a lot of these also predate Judaism, how can you then ground that atheists are acting under a Christian ethical worldview?
Well, it's not really me that's even saying this. This is even stated by even non-Christian historians such as Thomas Holland, Bart Ehrman,
the question that I asked was, how do you ground it?
I would just simply say that, hey, we all God, according to the Bible, God gave us all these moral standards, but it just so happens Jesus is the one that came and influenced the world in such a way to actually follow
So let
these
me
moral
re-ask the
standards.
question because you're
And
dodging the
when you
question. This
let
is
me
dodge number
let me
two.
just finish what I'm trying to say
Well, let
here.
me
Now,
re-ask the question.
Cyber, if you would like to
Wait, guys,
debate me in the future, you tend to
guys,
want to debate me every time I come up here.
guys.
If you
Okay,
want to have a
Okay.
debate, I'll be happy to do
You're
that.
not answering the question.
Yeah.
okay, guys. We do have to keep it orderly because we have a lot of people in line.
Hate this, Cyber. I would
Hey,
be
hey,
willing
hey,
to.
hey, hey.
So let me
Hey,
re-ask the question real
Guys,
fast.
wait.
Okay.
Before you re-ask the question, we do have to keep this orderly because we do have like 9 other people in line, so we probably want to keep it to one question per person.
I do
Yeah,
have.
that's fair. I'll just re-ask it real quick. Since Confucianism and Buddhism and many of these Greek philosophers who were agnostic predate Judaism and definitely Christianity, right? So they predate, they come before. How can you then state that all atheists are grounding our ethical views based on the Christianity ethical views?
It just so happens Western society was built upon Christianity, and most atheists on these platforms are from Western society, so that's how I say that.
Oh, so you can't
Okay.
answer. Got
Well,
it.
we could probably
May I ask my
stop it there.
question?
Wait, Cage wanted to ask a question.
Okay, we do have to get to Everlasting, then we'll do Mimi, and then we'll get to
Okay.
everybody else.
Yeah, my
Everlasting.
question is, I'm wondering, No Degree, are you aware of the fact that Dr. Josh Bowen finds biblical slavery to be extremely immoral? We hear him say it every day. That's my question.
I am actually aware
So
of that.
why do you
and
keep
I think he would
why do you
also
keep
say this.
why do you keep name dropping him, knowing that he opposes you
Because
in
he
this
also
viewpoint?
he doesn't oppose me in what I was saying. He doesn't oppose me in the sense that he argues that these laws and rules and regulations were just norms for the ancient Near East.
Okay, and also
So
really
Yeah, but
he may
that's
think
not the
they're
topic of
immoral.
this debate. This
Wait,
debate is
hold on,
about
guys. Hold on.
morality, whether
I
it's moral.
wasn't using Dr.
Wait,
Josh.
sorry.
I was
I
just
don't mean
talking.
to. I don't mean to mute people, but just really quick, everyone. The poll is in the corner. So vote on the poll. There's like a minute. 2
Big
minutes
did I
left.
win this time.
It hasn't been released yet. It's still going for like a minute or 2 more minutes. And with that, let me cut that question there, but maybe we might have some time after. The whole event is going to end at 10:20, and we can talk about anything for as long as you guys want afterwards. But thank you, Everlasting, for your question and your candor. And then, yeah, I'll try to fit you in later.
Mhm.
Let me see. The next person, let me hop around and try to get, yeah, we got like 10 people in the guest request, but I'll try to see if I can get to everyone. If you have,
Okay, Kate.
What's
Question.
oh,
you
you might
might-
be having connection issues.
I'm not going to ask. Well, I want to ask a question to.
One
Am I?
more. Yeah,
You're breaking
one
up a
more.
little bit.
I'll ask my question
Oh,
really
shit.
quickly.
Okay, I'll let Mimi ask a question, and then we'll get back to you, Cage. Go ahead, Mimi.
Okay, so No Degree. What makes you think all people that are atheists are going to be alike? And how do you
Well, it
know?
just so happens I don't think they're all going to be alike. It just so happens I think most of the ones on social media have wrongly, and one might could say blindly, followed atheist talking points that preceded them, and therefore they haven't really looked into it. So they're alike in that regard.
But that's you judging them.
Okay, and then we can go on to the
Judge of them? Yes.
Go ahead.
Kate, it's your turn.
Okay. Okay,
I
Cage.
mean, my question's for either one of you. Do you think that either of you sufficiently gave an account of what it means for a moral proposition to be justified in the debate? Either one of you.
Yeah,
I
I
would
was
say I was
just
actually really trying. Yeah.
I grant that. You, Vizzy?
I was I'd say I was trying to, establish that, these commands by God, right, are moral in like each of the people's in the audience's like worldview, right? So I was trying to like get them to see if, oh, does this align with my values or not? And then they get to decide whether the slavery command in the Bible was moral or not.
Okay. Just because as a viewer, right? You guys both keep like arguing over the content of it, which is kind of irrelevant to me. The content could be whether or not God is raping children. I don't give a fuck about that. I care about whether or not it's justified. But I don't know what either of you take it means for a moral proposition to be justified, which leads me to conclude that neither one of you made a good case for either side, because I'm still over here wondering what the fuck it means.
I do have to agree
But
with
that's
Case
my
on
question.
that
I'm
one.
sorry.
Thank you for your
Yeah, I just mean
opinion.
I just think if it's aligns with your values, that's just all I think it means.
I think if you guys are more of yourself in this debate, you would actually have a good point to get across.
Let's get to the next question. Benny Boy?
Yeah.
Or Ben?
Yeah. So my question's probably it's sort of for no degree, but both can answer. So in Raymond Westbrook's A History of Ancient Near Eastern Law, he gives a definition of slavery and says that a criterion for a legal definition of slavery is its property aspect, since persons were recognized as a category of property that might be owned by private individuals. Now, property would make them no longer a person, and that would mean that you cannot kidnap property, you cannot steal from property, because they are property. They are already owned as an object. So I don't know how you could, like, can you explain how that fits into your arguments?
If you look at Exodus 21, when it talks about the ox, it says the ox has an owner. The word there is translated as owner, but the slave here, or the servant, has a master. That's a different Hebrew word. So the Bible does not view it the way he was saying here. I'd say he's sorely mistaken here. But I think he may be thinking about something like Aristotle. Aristotle thought that, but the Bible doesn't teach that it's property in the same sense as a cow or something like that.
Like in Leviticus 25, when they say this may be property that you can give to your children.
The key here is the master relationship there. Even if it says this may be property, it doesn't consider the master as the owner, but rather the master over the foreigner. But if it were an ox or something like that, it would consider as the owner. So there's two different Hebrew words there, drawing a distinction between the two, showing the Bible is not recognizing it as property in the way that this scholar you're saying thinks it's recognizing it.
Okay, let's try to get to the other guests, but we'll have time later.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And let's see. I'm just going at random, picking people.
Hello.
For us.
I want to let everyone know that me and my son, he's putting noodles into the hot dogs to give them hair, so it looks like people. Anyway, that's more interesting than this debate was. What would it take for both of you to never debate again, is my question for both of you.
For your opinion.
All right. Well, that's not an opinion, it's a question. And Coco, can we have a third option to the voting positions? And the third option is both of these people should never debate again.
I'm not sure I can have that option, but maybe I might incorporate a neutral option in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So just to clarify for both people, I could make it more specific. No degree. At what point do you become responsible for leading people away from Christ?
I'm not sure. I don't think that.
That's something you should think about.
Person could ever really. Well, I don't think that a person can ever say, "Hey, I didn't accept Christ because someone led me away from Christ." Because God gives, even though I may misspeak. Well, let me finish. even though I may misspeak or something here and there, there's always other people that they can go to that may not misspeak. So I don't know what you mean by that.
To clarify, you think that it's impossible for you to lead somebody away from Christ?
Well, yeah, if you're not intending to, I don't think God will prevent you from
Think
doing
that,
that.
sorry, that's not the question. Do you think that it's possible for you to unintentionally lead someone away from Christ?
No, not if your heart is with
Oh,
Christ. God's not going to let you do that. Yeah.
well, that's illiterate. Okay.
Because the desire here is for people to actually look at this and actually consider it as opposed to just go with deconstruction atheist talking points.
All right. Hey, Vizzy, what'd you think of this debate, man? Do you think you did well?
I think I could have done better.
I like
But
your
yeah.
I like your honesty, man. Do you think you won, or do you think you both lost?
I don't know. It's up to whoever to decide.
All right, I'm gonna be honest with you. It's objectively the case that you both lost. Coco, you should bring up Tiniest next to bring up a woman. All right, love you.
Thank you for your opinion.
You know, it's objectively the case.
Okay, and we can bring up the next guest.
Thank you, Shark. That was sweet. I have my question. I came up here earlier. I already asked Vizzy a question. No degree. I wanted to ask you: would you rather be a slave of the Bible or a slave in America during the transatlantic slave trade?
Much better slave. I'd much rather be a slave in the Mosaic Law. That's not even. That's an easy question.
Why?
I would not want it to be a slave in the transatlantic slave trade.
Why?
Because under the Mosaic Law, there's the master is supposed to be representing God, and so he is the one that is held to a high standard, and we didn't see that in the transatlantic slave trade.
I mean, the slave masters were under the impression that they were doing the same thing.
I don't know. Based on what I've told in history, I don't know how they could think God would approve of some of that stuff.
What were you told in history?
But look,
God?
I mean, I'm not really an expert on what specifically they were doing in the antebellum South, but it would be an easy answer to I'd much rather be a slave under Abraham or Moses or somebody like that than some Southern slave owner.
Okay.
That's not even a hard question.
Okay. Thank you.
With that, we're gonna take one question from Haru, and then yes, we do have to move on to our next debate, which I'll start bringing some of the contestants up.
Okay, so this is a question for both opponents because we can all agree in the chat that this wasn't a formal debate. Were y'all informed that this was supposed to be a formal debate and how cross-examinations do work through the processes? Or no?
Is yes. I did not realize that because I think last time we debated, we have 7-minute openers and 5-minute cross examinations, but maybe I was wrong. I did not realize we were going to have 20-minute cross examinations total. So admittedly, I did not have a lot of questions. I didn't really need that many. So I decided to use some of that time to explain certain positions. And I think Vizzy probably would agree that he probably didn't feel like he needed that much as well, but I'll let him speak for himself.
Yeah, so I was aware, but I just tried not to talk under, at the same time as No Degree, just so I can, minimize the confusion. But there's just some times that I have to interject. But yeah.
Host, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, but make it quick.
So No Degree, during Vizzy's cross-examination, you completely overtalked your opponent, which isn't how you do formal debates with a cross-examination. I would hope that you would have knew that through the other debates that you have had on this platform. Coco, thank you for having me. Have a good day.
Yep. And
respond.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I just think if I feel like someone misrepresented what I said, it is the case. I think you should clarify and say, "Hey, this was not what I was saying." So maybe that's what I was trying to do there. I don't know. You'd have to give me the specifics.
Okay. With that, we do have to move on to our next debate. Thank you, Vizzy. Thank you, No Degree. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it.
Vizzy, I will say you are a very, very good opponent. I really enjoyed debating you. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
Yep. And feel free to let me know if you guys want to debate in the future. Thank you both for being up here.
Cool.
And with that, we are going to move on to our next debate.